Okay, well, hello everyone. As we now press record, I feel like we have to start it kind of more formally. And obviously this is like a training session, and it feels like we haven't had one of these for a really long time. When I sort of sat at my desk, and the last one was about leadership. So I didn't know whether it might be worth kind of just kicking off there and having a bit of a reflection about what we noticed about leadership from that session, which was quite a while ago, or anything that you've noticed kind of since then. Has anybody got any thoughts, or do you need to? Because we talked about,
I can't remember.
I took a while actually.
We talked about, was it what good looked like, what good leadership looked like, and what bad leadership looked like. Was that it?
That was it. And we talked about listening qualities and how to listen better with your teams. And we talked about the states of mind, and how states of mind is really important in both having a team and also within being in a more leadership role as well. And we talked about the zones. We talked about the green zone and the red zone and what they meant and what they were telling us, as opposed to what we think they normally are telling us. Is it all coming back a little bit?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I think states of mind is really important, irrespective of what context it's in, whether it's in a personal context or whether it is in a leadership or in a team context. So we talked about the red zone being like a low state of awareness, low state of consciousness, where we don't really know that we're thinking, we're just kind of in the experience. Do you remember that? So have any of you noticed sort of where your state of mind is ordinarily?
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like recently, I don't know if it's because I feel like it's like pregnancy hormones, but I feel like I've noticed that I've just started getting really just like, I don't know, emotional about stupid things and stuff. So yeah, but I've started to notice, that's like definitely changed, because it was fine. Like, yeah, I don't know if it's because I've hit like, I'm over, like I'm in the second trimester. I don't know, but I feel like the sickness has like calmed down, and now I'm just like paranoid all the time about everything. But yeah, I've definitely noticed my state of mind change, I think, and when it's like normal again. Yeah, I can't really know. I don't really know the reason.
I do think I think we can get really wrapped up about the reason, and sometimes it can be helpful. I mean, sometimes I find that my state of mind can be lower. And when I say low state of mind, I don't mean like low mood, just like everything feels really intense, whether it's like I'm really happy, or everything seems to be going amazing, or everything's rubbish. It's like there's an intensity to the feeling, and I'm just like in that experience. I'm not aware that, oh, I'm doing bad mood thinking, or I'm doing insecure thinking, or I'm just feeling it. And I tend to feel that more when I'm tired.
Yeah, that could be it, to be honest, because I'm getting way more tired than I was before. So that probably is what it is.
Yeah, it's not always. Sometimes, I mean, like the other morning I woke up and I was just in a grumpy mood. I mean, my husband was just taking the mickey out of me, why are you so grumpy? I was like, well, I don't know, I just feel grumpy today, and that just felt real. That was just the experience I was having. And I think we can go too much into the analytical of, well, why am I feeling like this? What is the cause of my feeling? Like, well, actually, I'm just feeling like it. So if nothing particular is coming to mind, like I I know that I'm not tired, or perhaps I'm a bit hormonal or a bit run down, if there's nothing that's coming to me, then it's just.
Yeah, I found it last year, I think, actually, but it's coming into play again now because it started to be sunny again. That when I'm tired, I get more anxious. Straight, like it's obvious. It comes in twos, and I have to be really careful if I have sun attacks or anything, because I go into a spiral instead of just. Whereas now, much more now, I just kind of go, all right, that's just because of this, or that I'm just feeling like that right now. But it'll go. Whereas I used to just go into this ridiculous spiral that I couldn't get out of. Whereas I don't do that anymore because I don't worry about it, because I don't think, oh my God, why am I feeling like this or anything. I just say, oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And I think that the more we see it as kind of information about our state of mind rather than our state of our circumstances, I think that's where the difference is. So all the time we think, right, we could have anxious thoughts at any point of the day. So if you imagine like our thoughts are coming along like this, but our state of mind kind of goes up and down. So if that thought comes along and our state of mind just happens to be high, it's like we're kind of like, oh well, and it just moves off. We might not even notice it, or if we do, we don't pay attention to it because we're so aware of it and we're not willing to give up our good feeling to go into that thought. But if that same thought comes along and our state of mind is low, it kind of like almost intensifies it. So then all of a sudden it feels really real. And our state of mind drops just because that's what happens to human beings. It's like, we're not meant to be up here all the time. It just goes up and down. But I find that my state of mind tends to drop when I'm tired.
Yeah.
I can just wake up because I'm human. And then it will all feel real. And I love Amy's reflection on that the more we kind of notice that and say, oh, okay, it's just my state of mind dropping and I'm just feeling my thinking right now. That's all I'm doing is feeling my thinking. Then we don't have to do anything extra to it. We don't have to look into, or why is it happening, or what can I do to stop it, or how can I make it pass quicker, or all we have to do is kind of notice it and it will just pass by itself. It will just carry on going.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think especially because I do find like with me, I'll have like, I'm usually like happy most of the time, to be fair, but if I have like a low mood or I get like stressed out about something or upset, I'll usually get over it quite quickly. So I'll say to my boyfriend, I'm like a sponge. I just like go back to normal again. I say, yeah, that's true. I think I just need to stop like worrying about why I'm feeling that way. And yeah, just like what you said, just notice it and let it pass.
Yeah, because it does pass.
Yeah.
I think it's that idea of like having permission to feel like that as well. I think that's part of it. Like, so you're allowed to feel like absolute crap sometimes. That's okay. And then if you give yourself that permission, then you're much easier to kind of snap out of it or move out of it or just let yourself be and then not get tired in it. And I use that on being tired as well because I have chronic fatigue. Like I can get really tired and I used to try and fight it all the time to my detriment. And now I'm much more willing to kind of go, I'm too tired, I can't do it. I need to stop kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's really important because it's so easy to add to that mental load, isn't it? Kind of innocently, because we're thinking about or worrying about why it is that we're feeling in the way that we're feeling. So you're almost perpetuating that state. because you're generating more thoughts, and because you're in a low state of mind, they feel even real. So you just kind of keep going on, and so you're carrying it on unnecessarily. And it's so much easier to notice, isn't it, when we're in a low state of mind, when we're in that red zone and they're low mood thinking. It's so much easier to notice that, because it feels so different to when we're grounded and happy. So I think we tend to worry about it more, and I think as a society we're almost conditioned to worry about those kind of more low mood thoughts. So when they happen, we do tend to go, I can't feel like this, I've got too much to do, I've got, you know, and we start to then carry on that mood and that experience when we don't need to. So if we notice this in anybody else, so obviously we're noticing it in ourselves, but have we been noticing the kind of red zone in other people?
Oh, sorry, I'm quite new to this because I wasn't in the last sessions, but what is the red zone? Sorry.
No, that's fine. So as a human being, we kind of go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
So you might notice that sometimes you're really aware of what you're thinking.
Okay.
And almost like you've got like a distance, like almost like you're observing it.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, I'm in a bad. Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm okay. You know, and you can kind of distance from it, and other times you're just in it.
Yeah. So it's almost like if you work in, I don't know, a toxic workplace, you can feel like the energies and sense certain things going on, because I've got experience of that as well. So like that, really.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So you might start noticing it in other people, but like for yourself, for our own selves as human beings, we have this ability to be really aware of our thinking and our own personal mood, and whether we feel grounded or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be like your green zone, if you like. And generally speaking, the green zone is almost like the place before all the thoughts come crashing in. You know, it's like where we feel quite calm and happy. It's almost like a neutral kind of zone. You know, we feel grounded there.
Yeah.
And then as our state of mind drops, our thinking becomes even more kind of real. So we might just be in a bad mood, right? We're not actually thinking that, oh, I'm thinking myself in a bad mood today. We are just in a bad mood, and we tend to feel that the world is causing us to feel in a certain way. Yeah. We might be saying to our partners or work colleagues or inanimate objects or animals, saying, you're really annoying me, you're really getting on me.
I did that to my cat today.
I'm very stressed. Yeah, and we feel that.
Yeah, definitely.
We feel really stressed. Like in that moment, it's like the red mist descends and we are just in our experience, and there is, you know, if somebody comes along and says to us, right, you know, you're creating this, don't you, with your stressful thinking, we just want to punch them because it does not look like that to us.
Yeah. I had that this morning because I had to feed the baby. He's 6 months, so he was sitting in his high chair screaming for his food, and then my cat Zelda was meowing for her food, and I was like, I'm one person, I can't do it all. And I was just at 7 a.m, I was just so like,
Yeah. So in that moment, that's such a good example, because I think we can all identify with that.
People shouting at me.
Yeah, in that moment, we're just like, ah!
Yeah.
We're like in the red zone. Like
definitely.
We're not aware of our state of mind at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
Whereas other times, and every kind of situation, there's almost like a peak. So we can almost feel ourselves getting sucked in, and then it's like really intense, and then we start to come out of it again. Yeah. And we start to calm down. And as we're calming down, that's because those thoughts are passing and our state of mind is rising. And we're just becoming aware. And we might even think, oh, gosh, I really lost it then for a minute, didn't I? You know, we then start to become aware of it.
Yeah.
So we have this like beautiful part of us where we go up and down. Now, human beings go up and down many, many, many times during the day, right? So we have times where we feel like, oh yeah, this is okay. Almost like we're kind of floating above life. And then other times we're whoosh right into our experience. And it feels real, and then we go, ooh, and then we're back up again, and then we go whoosh, and we're right down. Now, what we see on the outside, looking in, is we may see a person who can be quite calm and quite grounded and really quite kind of natural. And then they can just change almost in a heartbeat and be really, really stressed. They could be really sharp. They could be lacking in patience. And then 5 minutes later, they'd just be a little bit more approachable. Yeah. So they'll be good because everybody else is going up and down as well. Yeah. So the reason why this is really important is because, generally speaking, when somebody shares how they feel when they're in the red zone, it can be quite disconcerting to us. Because they might be sharing all their insecurities and all their worries and all their fears. And of course, it seems really real to them, so it will be quite emotionally charged. And then, of course, once they've done that, do you remember we were talking about last time about them kind of emptying everything out, and then they feel better, because that's how our psychological system works. We get rid of everything and then we feel better. Yeah. So the trick is when we're seeing somebody in that position, well, you tell me, what do you think they're telling you? Do you think they're telling you about their state of circumstances? Or do you think they're telling us about our state of their mind, or just where they are? Have you been in that situation where somebody's like just shared all their woes and their fears, and this has gone wrong and that's gone wrong, and
Yeah, I was going to say my friend actually, my neighbour invited me around on last Friday after work. Not after work because I wasn't working, but she invited me around on Friday, and she was like, oh, I just need to speak to you about, like, I just need to talk to someone about, because she just found out about a little boy getting into like a school, and she wanted to like rant about it basically. But she said to me, oh, I feel after we talked, she said, oh, I feel so much better. I feel like I just needed to just offload and talk to someone about it. So yeah, that was like a prime example of, yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah.
But often, don't you find that when we're working with somebody, or if we're close to somebody, we take notice of the content of what they're sharing with us, and we think that content is true.
Yeah.
Oh, you really feel like that? Oh my goodness, I can't believe you feel like that about work. Oh no. And then we start trying to make contingency plans, and based on how they were feeling in that moment. But how many times do they feel better once they've got it off the chest? Yeah.
We have a thing where you have to ask, I always end up asking people if they want a rant or they want an answer. Because I can't sit and not give solutions out. My husband's the same, he does the same thing, he wants to give solutions all the time. And sometimes I'm like, I have to start the conversation with, I don't want a solution, I don't want it fixing. I just need to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more I mean, it's great when we have the presence of mind to do that, but sometimes we don't. But the more that there is kind of understanding, especially like within the team of, oh, okay, they might not actually want a solution right now. I think they're just completely in the red zone. So we just get everything out. Because that kind of emptying can really help somebody rebalance. And then you can have the conversation. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, that was a good kind of recap on what we were talking about before. And I think it's really important because I think actually when we're dealing with people, I think understanding that they go up and down too, and what it is that they're telling us. So really listening that, oh, they're just letting me know what their state of mind is right now. So the content, although we can be compassionate and we can be understanding, because that's how they're seeing the world right then in that moment, we don't necessarily have to fix it or offer solutions or take it on board or change our course of action or anything in that moment. We can have that conversation when they've got rid of everything that's in their head and that they're grounded, because that's when they've got clarity, that's when we need to, that's an indication more about how they're really seeing things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you just triggered a thought, because I come across this quite a lot. Because we work with engineers quite a lot. They like having kind of like a timeline and a fixed kind of, things are black and white a lot more, and they like having like deadlines and plans and everything like that. And I'm not like that particularly. You've worked with me before, and I'm a bit mad professor sometimes. And how does that work, or how does it interact, or I don't know what I'm kind of trying to ask, but the trickiest thing is you have to kind of, they will never leave that place. They'll fire up at certain points and they'll be like, what's happening here? When's this happening? All of that all the time. Or they'll just like helicopter manage, kind of jump in at different points. But you have to somehow, even though you believe things happen and you just go along, and somehow you have to give them that plan. You have to give them the answers, because otherwise they won't leave you alone. But you can't get on with it without doing it. It's like you have to double guess yourself or second guess yourself or second guess them.
Yeah, what kind of came to my mind is when somebody kind of approaches you and they're like, what's happening, what they're doing, and they're like, well, what's that telling you about their state of mind?
A mess.
Well, I would have probably been a little red zone. Real kind of. You know, I'm teasing, but yeah, they're in the red zone, aren't they? So they're in a position where it sounds to me like they're in a lot of fear. They don't think anything's happening, that nothing's going to get done. So immediately you've got information there of, oh, okay, this is how you're seeing things right now. I know how things are, but I know how you're seeing things. So we don't necessarily have to change our course of action, because as soon as their state of mind changes, they see things differently. But they're obviously used to picking up the phone when they're in the red zone. So what normally happens during that conversation, when you have a conversation with somebody who's there, what's the normal course of events?
Zelda's joining in there. Somebody's asked for something that they haven't got or something like that. They just want all the information, but they act as if you haven't done it.
Yeah.
Haven't thought of it or whatever, which just totally winds me up.
Now that's the issue. So the issue isn't they're in that state of mind. The issue is what happens to your state of mind when they ring. Oh, I react. I think they're telling me about me and my inability to do my job. What do you think they're really telling you?
That someone's asked them for the information.
Well, what can they only tell? What can their words only really tell you when they're like that? How they see things? What state of mind they're in? And we know that when their state of mind changes, they change how they see things. Because that's the only thing that's at play. So something's happened, somebody's asked them for something, they've reacted, they've rung you up in a state of reaction, and they're in the red zone. So the only thing they can tell you at that point is, hey, Amy, I'm in the red zone. My life looks at the moment. That's it.
Feels a lot like I've only ever had managers that do that.
Yeah, because most managers have no appreciation of state of mind. So during the course of that telephone call, do you find that by the end, they're usually okay? Yeah. Because during the course of that call, you've enabled them to settle so that by the end they see things clearer. That's your only job. Just need to calm down, get them out of the red zone, and then you can tell them what the plan of action is. What we tend to do, which isn't the most helpful, but sometimes we do it because we fall into a state of reaction, is we either try to fix, offer solutions, or defend opposition when somebody's in a red zone. And then all that happens is we butt up against each other, because it's like, this is how I see the world, this is how you see the world, and we're not going to agree. Because we both end up in that red zone. So the more we can notice the state of mind of the other person, we think, right, well, my first job is to get them calm. I can be sympathetic, I can be understanding, because that's how they see things. But I need to get them calm. I need to get, if they need to vent out all their frustration, then I'm going to allow them to do that. But I need to get them to a point where they are calmer, because then they'll listen to me. Does that make sense? And then give them my card. No, I didn't say that. That was recorded.
Alan nodding heads then.
Yeah. But you see, the more we understand that what we see is somebody else's state of mind, the less we suffer, because we can see it actually isn't information about us at all. It's information about where they are. And that's all. That's all it can ever be. Okay. But interestingly, today we were going to talk about goals and planning. So, which is quite interesting, really, considering you just raised that point about what do you do with somebody who wants really fixed kind of goals. So I was just going to ask you already, do you have goals? Do you use goals? Why do you think we need goals? What are your thoughts on goals?
kick off then if nobody else is gonna. I have goals for myself, but they tend to be like 5 years ahead or something, and I don't have the how. I don't have little tiny steps of how I'm going to get there or anything. I just think, right, doesn't really matter how I get there, but that's what I'm going to end up doing. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like you need those goals? What purpose do you think you have to have?
It helps me actually do things instead of procrastinating. But it's, I don't know, like, whenever anybody talks about goals, I always think of it in two ways. Like, some goals at work, in a workplace, just don't make sense. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of goals in a coaching, like in a sports aspect, they do make sense.
Okay.
Because there's a beginning and an end. There's a thing that's qualitative, quantitative, whatever it is, that you can measure. You can measure the difference of someone being able to do something or not. Mm. In our world, with the work we do, it's quite hard to measure what you do other than quantity.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're after.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I always get stuck in the middle about that, really.
Yeah, sorry.
I was
just going to touch on what Amy said there, like, about what we do. Like, I've always found with in-house jobs, like, where they set objectives and goals for the work, really hard to do, because how do you measure engagement? Of course, you can use analytical tools or whatever, but it is in sentiment, and how can you measure that? And it's quite hard to explain that sometimes. So I found when you have objectives set, especially as a manager and as an employee, I found that quite difficult in the past. So
yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? You know, about whether actually goals do motivate or not.
Sometimes they can, in that particular context, I do like having KPIs, and it can sometimes make you feel like if you haven't met it, because it is so hard to measure, you almost feel like a failure if you haven't achieved 200% increase in brand awareness, like, you know. So
yeah, I think that's an important point, isn't it? I know there were some studies a few years back now where companies removed their kind of performance indicators, and they actually found that people perform much better without them.
Yeah, definitely.
When completely contrary to, you know, all of the studies that have gone before.
But yeah, I completely get that. I think whenever I've looked at goals more recently, like when I haven't been employed, I've looked at it more like, even with the kids when you're coaching and stuff, you don't give them a set goal. Like, you don't give them something they're aiming at. All you give them is they're going to improve on something. You don't give percentages. You don't give like number of serves in or anything like that, even though that should be what they're aiming at. You give them things they can see. So we have targets on the floor, hit the target that many times. If you hit it, you can go get a sweet. Things like stupid things like that. And by the end, they're better at it, and they can see they're better at it. So they've achieved their goal, but they didn't know they had a goal to start with. I don't know, it's weird. I kind of clash with most of the coaches the way that I do it. So.
Yeah, no, I kind of, I'm kind of with you on that point. It was interesting what you said though about, you know, when you have like a big goal and you don't have the smaller steps, because a lot of people will call that a plan. So what do you think about plans?
I love a plan. But I think that's because, like, for me in particular, like, I like to have, like, I'm weaning my baby right now, as I keep going on about, but like, I've got my plan every Sunday that I do step by step, but that helps me get less stressed when I'm actually doing it. So if I've got that recorded plan, it's just, I know everyone's different, so.
A lot of the time in our world, a plan is for other people.
Yeah.
So a plan is to show what we're doing. We do the work in our heads.
Yeah.
Because that's the bit that I struggle with. Like if I'm putting a strategy together or a plan or something for a client, I struggle with the minutiae of the plan because I know what I'm going to do, but I don't know how to articulate that.
Yeah.
Not all the time anyway. And it's like, it's for somebody else to look at and say you're hitting all those steps. It's not, or that you're doing it right, or it has this, I've only just figured this out now as you've been talking. It seems to have this thing that it's actually for someone else. It's not for me, because I barely look at it after it's been put down anyway.
Yeah, because you know kind of what to do. I also really
I mean, a schedule is different, but a plan is like, how do you know? Like the world's going to change tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a really interesting point, isn't it? I mean, what happens when our plans don't go to plan?
Change them.
Sorry, what was that?
Change them.
Changing, yeah. But it's interesting though, isn't it, that sometimes we can have this like really fixed plan and then life has other plans, you know, even within business. You could have like a business plan, but actually that could all change.
Yeah, absolutely. That one's just, yeah.
Yeah. So
the pandemic's showing that more than anything, really. You know, I worked for a business travel company before working with Amy, and we did a big rebrand, growth strategy, and now they've basically gone under, you know, all that time and investment gone in because business travel in the world of events is sort of gone as it is. So it just shows you.
Oh, it does. It does. And what happens, because I mean, we're dealing with like human beings here, you know, and if you give somebody a plan and you say, this is what's going to happen, what happens to them when that plan doesn't go ahead? You know, is everybody like super flexible and they just go, oh no, that's fine? Or do people struggle when plans don't go to plan?
You've ever come across Network Rail, right?
Yeah.
Prime example.
Yeah, because we put our security in the plan, right? We think or another way of saying that is we put our well-being in the plan, right? So we think we're going to be okay because we have a plan. It kind of goes a bit to what Emma was saying about her weaning plan, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to be stressed because I now have a plan. Yeah.
But then the baby decides he doesn't want sweet potato.
Tuesday. Well, I kind of get that because Emma's doing batch cooking. So I kind of get she needs a plan for the week because she's batch cooking things, putting them in the freezer. So I kind of get doing that kind of plan.
So no wastage. But then, then he turns around and says he doesn't speak. He's like 6 months, but he's like, I don't want this. And then I'm like, oh, what are we going to do? You know?
So it's like
or he chucks it and then I've got nothing there and I'm like,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I have that problem. my little boy's so fussy, just won't, and like I'll plan what I'm going to make him for tea and he just half the time he just won't eat it and I'm like, oh, I should have thought of a plan B, but there really is a plan B.
Yeah, I don't know with parenting. I don't think I was really a plan A, to be fair. You know, I think sometimes when a wheel falls off when we invest our well-being in that plan. So we say, I am going to be okay because I have that plan. And then when that plan doesn't go to plan, the logical conclusion is then I am not okay because I now no longer have that plan. Yeah. Where really a plan, well, what do you think a plan is? Fundamentally, what do you think a plan is?
Is it like a set of goals, maybe?
Yeah, it is a set of goals, but like even like beyond that, what do you think a plan or a goal is made up of? Where did it come from?
A list of tasks.
Where did
A plan is a list of tasks to me.
and where does the plan of tasks come from?
Aspirations, maybe.
Yeah, no, we're getting there. What are aspirations? How do we make up an aspiration?
Are you going to tell us its thought?
What do you think? What is it? Somehow? Can it be anything other than thought? I shouldn't ask questions I don't know the answer to, but I do know the answer to that. But it is all thought, right? It's what we think's going to happen, what we think we'd like to happen, right? It's what we've kind of created in our mind. It's a thought. Do you think it's a good indication of what will happen? When we have a plan, is it an accurate indication of, yeah, this is what definitely is going to happen?
Not definitely, but if it's based on prior experience, the ratios go up.
Possibly. I don't think, I actually don't now, I used to think that. I actually now don't think that's true. You know, when we have all these statistics and say, oh, you know what, it's happened 99 times before, therefore it's bound to happen again. Well, nothing's nailed on. You know, we can tell ourselves that. But, you know, I think as Emma's beautifully pointed out before when the global pandemic happened, and I think that's shown us in one really good example that actually just because something's happened before forever, it doesn't mean it's going to happen like that again in the future. Yeah, so I think the more alive we are to the fact that, okay, well, we think this is what's going to happen, but ultimately we don't know. And the more we are alive to that, the less it makes sense to believe our well-being is invested in whatever is going to happen, what we think is going to happen. Going back to Emma's weaning program, which I think is actually a really good example, you know, because we're always dealing with human beings, aren't we? And human beings are gloriously random, you know, and they start like that from birth, you know. It's like,
oh yes.
We think that we're going to have sweet potato on Tuesday. He's had sweet potato on Tuesday the last 5 weeks. He's bound to have sweet potato on Tuesday. This week, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's the thing as well I read that says like babies like 8 times to offer them a food, which to me is mad. Like, why would you, if I was being offered something 8 times, by the 8th time I'd be like, I don't want it. So what is it that changes? Why? I'm not quite sure why they say that with babies.
I don't know if it's just babies. I don't know. My mum used to put mushrooms. I hated mushrooms when I was a kid, and she kept putting them in until I liked them. But like, it took years.
Yeah.
The only thing she's never been able to get away with is contaminating things with black pepper. It's the only time I'd refuse. That's it. Gone.
Yeah. You know, we still have, you know, we may have taste buds, so we can educate, but we still have free will. If we don't want it, we ain't gonna have it. You know, that's the end of it.
It took me like 2 years working at a Greek restaurant to like olives. I used to try them every shift.
Yeah, but there was a little bit of you that wanted to like them, so you carry on. So there's that bit about human beings that makes us random.
Everybody said they were so good.
Yeah, I had to eat about 20 before I liked them. But you see that when even when we're talking about in a business context, business is people. A business doesn't exist without the people.
Yeah, I think I was like halfway, not even halfway, but on a different day, I would have gone totally in the red zone. I was meant to send out some new templates to the full team of one of a client last week, at the end of last week. but we couldn't send it as part of the team update because the files were too big. So then we were trying to find different ways to do it, and we can't use WeTransfer because half the businesses don't allow it. So then we were trying to find a different way, and then we didn't have access to the SharePoint that they use, so we couldn't put them up on there. And it was like, I can't share these things. Like, I'd said that I was going to do it. It was in the plan, like you said. I can't do it. And then this morning I got an email from the director saying, Amy, we really need to share these things on wherever we need to share them. When you share them with the team, I was like, we can't. And it was kind of one of those moments where in another day, I would have got annoyed at me, like, for not doing it properly. Like, I can't do my job properly. Like, I haven't provided the things. And I was just like, well, I can't help it. Like, I tried. It's not.
Yeah, it's nothing you could do. But it was a really good catch that you caught yourself. And it's good that you can reflect and say, actually, in a different state of mind, I would have responded differently to that.
Yeah, I would.
You know, so it's like, oh, okay, so my state of mind is the missing ingredient here as to how I respond to things. That's always the missing ingredient. And I mean, and it's the same with plans. You know, we can put a plan in place, but it doesn't mean that's going to happen, because actually we're really random, and so is everybody else who's involved in the plan. You know, so in my mind, a goal or a plan can only ever be an indication of travel. You know, it's like, oh, well, we could be going in this direction. But the more alive we are to the fact that how that it's based, you know, based on what we're thinking in that moment. Yeah. But even more than that, you know, when we create a plan, generally speaking, it will be based on things that we've experienced before. And just picking up on Amy's point about, well, we would have had experience of it. So that brings up a really interesting point of, well, how can we get to something that we've never imagined before if we only ever create goals based on our previous experience? What do you think could take us in different directions to places that we may not have imagined or envisaged? How do you think we can get to there?
I was waiting to see if anybody else would answer. New things you've not done before.
Yeah, I just wondered if anybody'd had an experience where they maybe had started going in a certain direction, but then ended up somewhere completely different, and what happened. Anyone have that experience before?
Maybe in a business context. I remember when I worked for an advertising agency in London, and we had to do an award entry, and for ages we were like, well, we'll just do the written entry, like the typical 1,000 words, whatever. And then we could see that we could do video, so we worked with our graphic designer and came up with this video for the entry, and submitted it, and then we won, and we got a shout out at the awards for it. So it was a little bit of a different path that we went down, but it ended up being a really credible, quite outstanding award entry, the organizer said, and that set then a precedent for how we did future entries as well, because it was in the creative advertising space, so things like that kind of stand out a wee bit more. So that was an example I can think of.
No, I think that's a great example. I love that. So how did you come up with the idea of a video entry?
Well, we just did a bit of research. It was a few years ago, so and I kind of looked on YouTube at the the magazine and like the different things that they had done over it, and had seen it was like an emerging trend almost. And I thought, well, we've got an in-house design team, let's utilize them. We went through like, oh God, about 20 iterations of the video before we cut it down to like a 2-minute one, and sent it to the client, and they were really happy with it. And even now, the agency, I've still got quite a few friends there. They're always like, oh yeah, we're still doing our award entries like that. So yeah, it was just a bit of a creative idea that now sets the tone for what they do still. So
yeah, I love that though. I mean, and it's kind of akin to like creativity, isn't it? You know, when you have those things that like just kind of like occur to you.
yeah, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but just tried it, and yeah, it was fun as well. And me and my friend, she's was the designer, we and her still the closest. We're always like, oh, it was so fun when we worked together and on that project. So yeah,
it's kind of like those light bulb moments, isn't it,
yeah, definitely.
that you get, and it just like pops into your head and you're like, oh yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, because prior to that, the design team hadn't only really been used for client work. I was like, actually, we should be using those guys for some of the stuff we're producing in-house, for our comms and marketing. So yeah.
Yeah. So what I find really interesting is that you had like a fresh thought. Like it was something that nobody had thought of before, that then led you to go and do some research about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's noticing that we have that capability to create that fresh thought that can take us in a different direction.
Yeah, definitely.
And that following that fresh thought not only took you in a different direction, but it actually kind of elevated you to a completely different space.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because what I was hearing in there is that your previous thinking was like, well, this is how we do our award entries. This is what they look like.
Yeah.
And then you had this ding, oh no, actually we could do this.
Yeah.
Took your whole award entry to a whole new level.
Yeah. And I remember I looked after the comms department, having to talk to the head of design to ask if I could get my colleague her time, and him having to be like, well, why do you want her time, and having to justify why I could get her support, and having to really fight quite hard to be like, well, actually, if we do this, and then afterwards he was like, yeah, it was, and he actually came to the awards ceremony with me and stuff, and when we won, he was like, oh, it was actually so worth it, and I was like, see. So
yeah. And it's, I mean, and that's just so cool, isn't it? And such a great outcome. But often we don't listen to those little nudges, do we? Those like bright ideas that we might have, or just different ways of thinking. Because we do get very kind of set in our ways of, this is how it's always done. This is how we think it's always going to be, because it's always been like that before. So we tend not to want to kind of branch out and follow that spark, that light bulb moment, that little bit of ingenuity.
Yeah, I think it's if you're new somewhere as well, and you're kind of like you've got that fresh pair of eyes, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, you don't get stuck in the old thinking, do you?
No. Yeah.
We because we do the messaging workshops and things quite differently to a lot of people, or a lot of different agencies, we come up with quite a lot of conflict from others about that, because they don't trust the process, because they've never seen it before, or they've not experienced it before. So I think there's something in that, like how to deal with that kind of, you're doing something that's different, so how do you, like Emma was saying, she had to justify it to people previously when she had a bright idea. I think it's there's something in that about how do you kind of cope with that bit of conflict that comes with like fresh thinking or new ideas or a new direction.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back, doesn't it, to understanding kind of where they are in their state of mind, so they feel safe in knowing that if I do A and B, then it gives me C. You know, I mean, it fascinates me that you tell me that, because they've obviously had some experience of messaging and comms before, and the reason they're coming to you is obviously because that's not worked before. You know, a bit similar to my work, in that people come to me because all the other ways of trying to coach and work hasn't worked before, so then they come to me.
Yeah, exactly. They you still get the conflict, but you still, it's because they want to know the answer before they've done the work, I always think. And when you have a new idea, this must be across all industries, but when you have a new idea in comms and a new way of delivering a message or a new way of delivering some information to somebody, it's like you have to prove it before they'll believe you. So you have to show it works, like you have to do the whole thing before they'll actually get behind the idea. I come across that quite a lot.
Yeah, well, that's just human beings, isn't it? Yeah, that's not a reflection on your work. That's just human beings, like reassurance. You know, they don't like the unknown, especially when we don't know how we work, because the majority of human beings believe that they know what's going to happen, and so therefore they're safe. As soon as they don't know what's going to happen, they don't think they're going to be safe. And that safety could be anything, in terms of like, oh, we might not get the outcome that we want, we might waste all our money, this might not work. It doesn't have to be just physical safety, but ultimately they're investing their safety in a known outcome, and as soon as you take that known outcome away, they don't think they're going to be safe. So they're looking for reassurance. When they become more confident in the unknown, they don't need that reassurance anymore, because they know they're going to be okay, they'll figure it out. Does that make sense? So I think all you can do in that situation is kind of understand where they're coming from and be patient, because we're just insecure with the process, because they don't know what the outcome is going to be. But yeah. So going back to like what Emma was saying about her light bulb moment, has anyone else had any kind of experience like that, where they've had a new idea or something's occurred to them and it's taking them in a different direction to one that perhaps they've planned? It's sometimes quite good to reflect on it. You know, this idea that we can, in our minds, we feel like we know what's kind of going to happen, and we know, oh, I'm going to have this step and then this step and then that step, and that's going to take me to a goal. But often something happens, doesn't it, that takes us in a different direction. And sort of what is that? What was that fresh idea? Where did that come from? Where did Emma's fresh idea come from?
I don't know. For me, if I feel like, I don't feel like any of them are like light bulb moments. I feel like they happen slowly. Or, I mean, I don't know though. I mean, moving to London, that was a total change, but I don't know if I would call that a light bulb moment or fresh thinking. I just decided I was going to go.
Sometimes it can feel like that, can't it? It can be more of like a nudge or just like a feeling that this is the right direction that I need to go in. That's
Yeah.
what it is. This is, it might not
I
be,
mean,
but this is what we need to do. This is what feels right.
going and starting at RSSB has meant that I've been able to do this business stuff, do my business. That was like, it wasn't me, that was external world. Gave me the opportunity, I just took it.
Yeah, so the opportunity was there and you took the opportunity. It came up and you took it, you saw it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And that's how everything's kind of happened since setting up on my own as well.
Yeah. So what I'm driving at is that same intelligence that we've been talking about over the last few weeks that we all have is equally as important when it comes to goals and comes to planning. So that deeper intelligence, if you like, is up to date and relevant and in the moment. So a bit like Amy was saying, well, this opportunity came up and it just felt right, so I took it and I did it, and now it's actually quite good because it fits in with what I'm doing now. So we can create goals with our experience and we can create plans with our experience. And I'm sure we've all done that before when we've kind of thought up a goal and thought up a plan based on all our previous experience. And it may or may not have worked out. So we can do that. But it's also being aware that we've also got this other capability as well to create plans, but they may not be long term. They may just be telling us what the next few steps are to take. I'm just curious, Amy, you know, when you said you went to London, what did you think the long-term goal was going to be? Did you think that it was going to be that you'd work on your own?
Coming home again. I went to London and I had in my head I was going to London for 3 years. I'd get some good experience and then I'd come home, and I did. But while I was there, in the 1 year and 2 year kind of stretch, I wouldn't have been able to tell you when I was coming home. It just happened that it worked out at the 3 year point.
That really fascinating.
Then I worked for other people when I came back up to York for a bit, but yeah, just there's certain things that I've always gone with my. We've had this discussion before. There's certain things that I've always gone with my gut with. I've always gone with what felt right at the time. Like job interviews, it's an interview. You're interviewing them, and they're interviewing you. It's not one-sided. How you like choose a house and it feels right, and there's just certain things that are kind of meant to be or not meant to be, and it's whether they feel right or not.
How could that translate into the day-to-day? Into your kind of day-to-day, into your business planning, into the client planning? How do you think that could translate into that?
Well, we've done that in the past year with the organic kind of growth. So we've kind of just taken, or I have just taken steps as they kind of felt right.
Yeah.
Like taking Calamon was a bit of a new idea as an intern. I kind of already had an inkling that I needed some more people. So then it was just adding people on as I needed. It was organic. When it felt right, I needed some more expertise in this area than another person. But also, like the stars aligned, Emma got made redundant and then she started working for me. Jen got made redundant and then she started working for me. It's fluke.
Is it a fluke, do you think?
The only goal we have is to bring in two new clients every 6 months is our goal. That's the only goal we have.
Yeah. What I find really fascinating in that is, and I know we've had conversations about this, is that idea, isn't it, that you can create stuff in your head about what you think that will happen, but ultimately the more you can go in the moment, the more you end up creating what feels right for you at each stage.
I think goals have their place because they give you a bit of motivation of doing things. Like if I'd just sat on my backside, then none of that would have happened. So you still have to act, you still have to put things into action, but it comes back to the whole tiredness thing and being allowed to stop and given permission to just stop when you need to and go outside when you need to, rest when you need to, feel rubbish when you need to.
Yeah.
It's the same complex context for me now.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's very true. But knowing that as well, that you're not welded to any plan that you've made up.
Much easier when there isn't a plan.
Yeah, but even in terms of client plans and things like that, you know, things change, circumstances change. You have to be kind of responsive in the moment. And knowing that, you know, you have that deeper intelligence available to you that enables you to be responsive, you know, that will come up with solutions and workarounds, or, you know, as Emma was saying, that light bulb moment that kind of takes you off in a different direction, that actually takes you much further along than you ever thought possible. That's really where I'm pointing to, as to the place where, when we create our plans from there, they can take us beyond what we've imagined, because our goals that we set can only ever be ones that we've experienced before, because you can't set something you've never experienced.
Yeah, okay, so like when I set up, I had to do a 3 or 4 year plan for something. I think I'd get some funding or something or other, and I had to do this 3 or 4 year plan. And I think I smashed the 4th year plan in the end of year 2. Still no clue how I did it. But I didn't have any, I just went with what was, like we've said, I just went with what was right at the time. And it was end of year, a couple of weeks ago. So I was having a big conversation with my accountant. I remember sitting down when I first set up, saying what we thought the goals were what we thought that the amounts were going to be, that we were going to be looking at, just so that we had some context. And he actually said partway through the conversation, he was like, you realise that this is ridiculous in comparison to what you had down for this point in time. And it's like double to triple. It's ridiculous. It's just nuts. Now, I might have completely undervalued myself to start with. Don't get me wrong. But it's a totally different place. It's like I didn't really think I'd ever employ anybody. But did I? Did I already have that thought? But I just dismissed it.
Yeah. But I think that's such a really good example of how we can only plan on what our experience is. Our experience of ourselves and of what we feel we can achieve, and that lens that we look through about our experience, that's all we can only ever use to project forward and say, well, I think this is what could happen.
I bet Jen is in a similar position from when she started freelancing as well. I bet you never thought how big it could be.
Yeah, similar actually. That's what I thought of when you were talking about that. Like it's just sort of happened organically. Like I got made redundant, and then on a whim, I just sort of like um I messaged someone I knew that I'd done a bit of freelance for before, and he just happened to have some work. And I messaged Amy's partner because I used to work with him, and he just so happened to have, his partner was Amy, who owned a comms agency. So yeah, then it just sort of like built up from there. But yeah, I didn't really plan any of it. And I kind of always knew I wanted to go freelance, but I didn't know when and like how to sort of do it. So yeah, and whether I could like whether it would be sustainable. But I've sort of proved to myself that it has been sustainable. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said, oh, it was on a whim. What do you think a whim is? What do you think a whim is?
I don't know. It's a bit like, I think in the beginning I thought, oh, is this going to be like feasible over the long term? But yeah, I think, yeah.
I find it really fascinating because we do use words that really kind of bring this down. So we use words like whim, luck, organic, like it's, I don't know, that it's kind of has less value than plans we make up in our head. So you had a fresh thought that occurred to you that felt really right in the moment, and that was to reach out to somebody you'd worked with before, and you did that and it paid off. And then you had another fresh thought that equally felt right, to reach out to his partner, and that paid off as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, that was my intelligence. That was my deeper intelligence working, sending me in these directions. Yeah.
Organic. It's a similar situation with Emma as well. Emma got made redundant. She put something on LinkedIn about it. And I had, well, what you've just said, I kind of just had this, I'll message you.
Yeah.
That feels right.
Yeah. And it was funny as well, because when I was made redundant, I was just the week before I'd announced I was pregnant, 3 months, and then I was made redundant the week after. And then I was like, nobody's going to hire me. Like, what am I going to do? So I was like, oh, and I kind of like Jen, I thought, oh, try freelance and see what that's like. Because I'd always kind of wanted to. Yeah, and I loved it. And liked working with Amy, and then back part-time, and it works well with Felix. So my mum always like, she's like, oh, it's serendipitous. So it kind of worked out really well.
Emma has a fresh thought that is, I'll put something on LinkedIn. That feels right to me. Tap, 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 tap. And then Amy reads that, has a fresh thought. Oh yeah, I'll reach out to her.
Yeah.
This is how it's working, but we do kind of downgrade it as though that's random and it has no kind of foundation for us to rely on. And it's the most solid thing we've got.
Is that the same kind of description how I always say that I played about for a couple of years?
Yeah.
I didn't really think that I worked. I just played.
You were just using a different part of your mind to work.
I doubt I'd still even work as structured as I do if it wasn't for lockdown. It's only because Mike's been here and he works a solid kind of all of the time, that I couldn't get up and sit at my desk and work through a normal day. I never used to.
Yeah. I actually had a thought there the other day, when Amy and I worked together at RSSB. Do you remember we would be early starters because of the hot desk and thing?
Yeah.
So we used to sit, and you always used to say, oh, I'd love to do my own thing one day. And you've always been like passionate that you've always wanted to do that. And I've always admired you for always having that ambition. So, because we used to work with a team that was quite
different
characters. You had this one guy, we used to love our early mornings when he wasn't there. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that because the more we see that intelligent part of us at work, you know, so often that intelligent part will give us that kind of longer term view, you know, oh, this is where you're heading, you know, oh, I'd love to work on my own, right? This is where you're heading. Now, I have no idea how I'm going to get there because it doesn't tell you that. Because life isn't like that. There are too many variables. So it tells you, well, you just need to do this. You need to do this next step. You need to ring that person. You need to reach out and send that message. You need to go look at a video. You know, it's this kind of thing. And when we start to see that that is what is at play in terms of our planning, you know, sometimes we might need to put a plan together, right? But that intelligent part of us will help us do that. It's incredibly practical. I was listening to, actually, I think I'll see if I can dig it out because it was a recent one. Elsie Spittle was talking about planning and how this intelligent part helps you kind of bring a plan together. It will tell you what is in the plan. It feels right. Oh, well, we're going to do this for this amount of time. It doesn't mean that you're wowed to it. It just gives you that information in that moment. This is what you need. There it is. You know, but I think where we get unstuck is we start to think that our plans and our goals are informing us of what will happen. Like, oh, we're kind of foretelling the future somehow. And that's where we get stuck. But the more we see it as, oh, that's a direction of travel. And our internal intelligence is a bit like our own personal GPS, if you like. You know, it's like a navigational tool. It's like telling us what we need to do next. You know, that it can help us go kind of beyond what we can imagine, because we can only imagine what we've experienced before. Does that make sense? Has anyone got any questions about that? Anything that comes to mind? Was that helpful?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the thing that came to mind when you were talking to Cern is it as like probably as females, we probably have had it worse, or like more, or not worse, all of our lives. But you kind of told life's going to be a certain way. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to go to university. You're going to get a job. You're going to get married. You're going to have kids at whatever stage, and thinking that that's going to happen at a certain time. And then you get sucked into the whole, like, when everybody else is getting married and you're not, you get sucked into this, oh my God, why am I not? And then when everybody else is having babies and you're not, it's like, oh, what the hell is that all about? And I'm going to be too old and all that type of stuff. I think obviously, I think men get it as well, but I think that women suffer from that worse than others.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. I agree with that too. And then of course we end up kind of comparing with other people, their outsides with our outside and our internal, and you just kind of, you get really unstuck.
Yeah. And it's if you go against the norm, people are like, oh, like I've got a friend who's quite a creative free spirit, and she's a woodwork designer in Edinburgh, and she's all of the girls that we know, like, have got babies or whatever, and she's now pregnant, and everyone's like, oh, I'm surprised she's pregnant. Oh, she's a free, almost like because she's a free spirit, that there's a life, the contradiction of, oh, surprised she's settling down. I'm like that's, she's just chosen to live her life that way, you know. sitting there sort of knowing them.
That's a really random thing you just said there, settling down. I've hated that forever.
I hate that, yeah.
You don't settle down.
No. Yeah.
Language is like really interesting, how we describe things, and
and you say it like subconsciously as well. You're like, oh, check yourself.
What is a free spirit? You know, you start to see kind of how many constructs we live within. You know, what we think we should do, and it comes back to what we were talking about before about safety. It's because, well, if you don't do that, then you'll end up in a cardboard box somewhere. You know, why would you do that? And it's like, well, you figure it out. You'll be okay.
Interested, because I was talking to the friends, and so it's like a friend with another group of friends, and they're all very like picture perfect dentists, whatnot, you know, perfect house and perfect babies. And because she's they brand her the free spirit, I think she's amazing. But like, because of that way, she's not fitted into their social constructs almost. So it kind of annoys me a wee bit, because I just think she's just living life and embracing it. So
and you know, it just sounds as if she's just here, you know, she's listening to what feels right for her, and she's doing that.
She was like,
and it's like,
she's like a woodwork designer, and she was up doing some carpentry, like 5 months pregnant, like in a boiler suit, and I was like, you're so cool. So, you know.
Yeah, that's incredible. And the thing is that, you know, when we find something that we're really passionate about and that we really love, you know, life is really easy then, you know. It's that's the path that life has taken her on, and I think that's just incredible. But it is amazing how so many people in society will have a certain view as to how people should live, or what life should look like. And I think the more we see that, oh, okay, that's thought, you know, it doesn't mean anything more than that. The more we can be freer of that too.
Yeah, my cousin stayed at home. She went to university and everything. She's doing amazing. She's like 26 or something, and she's band 7 or 8 or whatever number it is in the NHS, like running several departments or something. She's unreal. But she's a little home bird, and she never leaves, and she's got this little group of friends she's always had her whole life. And I always feel sorry for her, because she always says she doesn't have any money, even though she probably does now. And she never goes anywhere particular. She doesn't do anything like particularly cultural. And my mum, every time that she's come to visit me for years, my mum's always given me extra money to take her out somewhere so that she sees another side of life. Because she's always had that thing that, like, she's not making the most of it, or like, and she only does these things. And I was saying it one day, because she at one point she used to go from work to visit my granddad in the home, to go home, to then look after her brother's kid, to then do something else. And just like, what are you doing? You're in your 20s, you're meant to be out having fun, and like rah, rah, rah. And Mike always says to me, do not judge her by your life standard. Because you're two different people, you don't want the same thing.
Yeah, she's just living the way that feels right for her.
Yeah. But you can't help it, can you, sometimes?
Well, no, because we're human, and we forget that we're all living in our own reality and seeing the world in a very unique way. And we think the way that we see the world is the best way to see it. That's kind of like human. Otherwise we'd be, I mean, could you imagine if that wasn't the case? We'd really get stuck, wouldn't we? So we're almost kind of wired to think that. And even if she was living her life in a limited way, that she's doing the best that she can do with the thinking that she has at the moment. And at some point, you know, she might think differently about life, or she might not, but it's her journey. And that's not for us to change her course. You know, her own intelligence will work that one out, because she has that too. You know, and that's the thing. But anyway, ladies, It's been fun. Thank you so much. I hope you found that helpful about goals. It's quite an interesting topic to explore and have a think about it. And I don't know where you're all up to with the book, or whether you've not kind of gone to one side and forgotten all about it, but do have a look at it, because there's some kind of useful things about sort of goals and planning and things like that in there. So do have a look in there too. Okay, and I think we are going to be seeing each other again in 2 weeks' time, because we've got next week, and then the week after that is May Bank holiday, and then we'll be coming back together again the week after that. So you've got a couple of weeks off. So do try and have a read of the book in between that, because that would be really cool. Okay. And you know where I am if you have any questions. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Now take care and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.